It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we are taking a look at the weekend of April 17th, 1992. 5 movies to look at today, but unlike last week, we don't have as many good movies here this time around. Some of these are very notable stinkers, and some of them are actually kind of good, but we'll delve into that as we go along here. Why don't we go ahead and start with the first movie that we have here, and that is John Goodman starring as the legendary baseball player Babe Ruth in The Babe. So this is not the first time somebody's tried to tackle Babe Ruth on the big screen. Most notably, back in 1948, there was a movie called The Babe Ruth Story, which was actually made when Ruth was still alive. Unfortunately, it's considered one of the worst movies of all time, mostly because it's heavy-handed, it doesn't really tackle all the major issues of Babe Ruth's life, completely forgets about the first wife that Babe Ruth ever had, and it tries way too hard to be sentimental, really. And it's a bad movie, but I'm not gonna lie. Having seen the clips that I've seen, this looks like it's one of those so bad it's good type of movies, because there are moments in this movie that I've seen in clips where I'm laughing so hard and thinking to myself, they really thought that this was going to make for a good film. And also very interesting here, there's actually a scene where a dog actually hits where a dog gets hit by a baseball, and they literally show they show the dog getting hit by the baseball. And all I'm thinking to myself is, holy crap, where's PETA when you need them on that? Like, it's part of a stupid plot too, where Babe literally decides to leave a baseball game to get this one dog healthy, and he ends up getting suspended for several games because of this. It's one of those stupid movies that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but at the same time, you gotta love it for just how incredibly stupid and so lazy it is. It's a movie that was literally rushed because Babe Ruth was dying, and not even kidding, he died 3 weeks after that movie came out. Like, they put up this happy ending together, making you think that, oh, Babe's gonna get out of there okay, and then 3 weeks later he dies in real life, and it's just like, whoops. But the thing is that the Babe Ruth Story is a bad movie, but it's one of those so bad it's good type of movies. But then you have this movie that's just a bad movie. It's not a very good movie. It's one that could have been, because you got John Goodman here, and John Goodman is a terrific actor. We've seen him on television and in movies. He is a great actor, and sadly, this was right around the time he was finding success with Roseanne. I think he won a couple of Emmys as Roseanne's husband on here, and of course that meant Hollywood was trying to make him into the next big movie star, and not a lot of the movies he picked were all that great as a leading man. I mean, he did have some good projects with Matinee, which we'll get to when we get to 93, and then, I mean, the Flintstones, I mean, he's perfectly cast in that, but that's still 2 years from now. And even in here, he's not badly cast as Babe Ruth. The problem is, the Babe Ruth Story, it's like they took that and said, no, we gotta tame it down even more. We gotta make this so family friendly that we're not even gonna bring up the drinking problem that he had, or his several affairs with women. And it's just like, it's just a badly written script, and I don't blame Goodman for this whatsoever, because I think he is trying his best with the material that's given to him, but it's not really good material at all. It's a movie that just really fails on so many levels, because it is playing it way too safe. I mean, for 1990s, play it safe. Like, this is a movie that's like, take the whole family to see this movie. Don't even bother to read the history about what Babe Ruth was actually doing behind the scenes. And like, the Babe Ruth Story, I've said before, is a so bad it's good type of movie. This is a movie that's just a badly written movie. It's not a great film whatsoever. It's even more sentimental than the Babe Ruth Story, and it's just not a good movie whatsoever. It's a major misfire on so many levels. I honestly can't even think of a movie that has actually done the Babe Ruth Story right. I mean, not even something like Everybody's Hero, which came out about almost 15 years later. And I think if I remember correctly, Brian Dennehy was Babe Ruth. I don't know. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, and when I saw it, I don't even remember it being that good. But I mean, someday somebody's got to make a good story about Babe Ruth. I mean, it took them many years to make a good movie about Jackie Robinson in 42. I mean, why can't you do it with Babe Ruth? I mean, if you're gonna do it though, you really need to go for it, like tell tell the true story of what really happened behind the scenes, all the drinking problems, the money problems, the affairs that he had, like all that kind of stuff. But I don't know who's going to be able to do it. But until then, we have these lesser movies that we have here to look at. And this is definitely a lesser movie. It's a very disappointing film, to say the least, because John Goodman really could make this work, but he's just given a really bad script to work with, and there's just nothing there. It's a big mess on so many levels, and that's really all I gotta say about The Babe. So let's go ahead and move on to a much better movie that we have here this weekend, and that is Lawrence Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum in Deep Cover. This is directed by Bill Duke, who we looked at one of his movies last year with A Rage in Harlem. And this is definitely a much better film. In fact, this is a very underrated neo-noir type of thriller that really showcases Lawrence Fishburne's ability as a leading actor. He's fantastic in this, and he also works really well with Jeff Goldblum, who I think gives one of his strongest performances I've ever seen in the film. These two guys really work off each other so well. You have a great cast in here, a great visual style, with some great cinematography by Bojan Bazelli, a really good script overall, and it is a good thriller mystery, like a good mysterious thriller. I mean, it's a movie that works on so many levels. Like I really think that when Martin Scorsese made The Departed, you could definitely tell that he took some stuff from this. Not a whole lot, but if you really look into this movie, you can definitely see some of the little bit of influences that he took from this particular film. But yeah, it's a really good film. It's a very underrated film made by a very underrated director. If you haven't seen Deep Cover, if you want to see a really good performance is by both Lawrence Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum, this is definitely the film to check out. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. That's Patrick Swayze starring in Roland Joffe's City of Joy. Yeah, this is definitely not one of the best films of the year. And in fact, this isn't even really that good of a movie. And Roland Joffe has made some really good films. I think he did The Mission with Robert De Niro. He did The Killing Fields. We looked at another movie of his, Fat Man and Little Boy, a few years back. And while that wasn't overall great, it was certainly a lot better than this movie. This movie just really feels like a movie that they're trying to push for an Oscar. I mean, they're trying to push Patrick Swayze to get an Academy Award because he was coming off the success of Ghost and Dirty Dancing, and everyone wanted to see him win an Oscar. But you gotta pick good scripts, and this is just not a very well-written movie. It's a movie that's very boring. There's nothing exciting about it. We've seen this stuff done over and over again, and there's just nothing new that's brought to the table here. It's a movie that looks visually gorgeous, but in terms of a story level, it's definitely not a major epic film that they're trying to capture the spirit of. And Sony has made some great epic movies in the past. Glory, Bridge on the River Kwai, Lawrence of Arabia, Gandhi. I feel like they were trying to copy that formula, but again, you need a really good script to work off of, and there's just none here, unfortunately. So, yeah, City of Joy, not that good of a movie, so that's a pass on this one. Let's move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is John Turturro in the spoof comedy Brain Donors. So this is produced by Jerry Zucker and David Zucker, and actually written by Pat Proft. Those are the guys that worked on the Naked Gun trilogy. And the director of this is Dennis Dugan, whose first film that he made was Problem Child. And you can tell that this movie is a parody of the Marx Brothers comedies, like specifically the first two comedies they made, A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races. And you have John Turturro, Bob Nelson, and Mel Smith as this group that is trying to be like the new Marx Brothers movies. I saw this movie a long time ago after I saw that trailer for the first time, and I thought it was a pretty funny movie. I mean, it's a very funny film that takes a classic concept of this classic type of screwball comedy, brings it into the modern day, and it is legitimately funny. There are a lot of really good funny moments in this particular film, and a lot of some of the best ones are even in that trailer that you saw, and it works for the most part. There are times when the comedy doesn't really stick as well as it should, but when I look at this movie, I think to what they did with the Three Stooges back about 10 years ago, which is another movie that's actually pretty good when you really think about it. You have a really tough task to do. You have to bring this classic style of comedy into the modern setting. And for the Three Stooges, for the most part, it actually did kind of work very well. It also kind of works here in Brain Donors. Not completely well, but it has a lot of funny moments in there that really make it work. The opening, which is kind of like a claymation style opening, is very creative. And like I said, the writing is very funny. As John Turturro, Bob Nelson, and Mel Smith are great in this. It's just a really funny movie. It's a very good, well-made film. It doesn't work all the way through, but I was definitely surprised when I found out how good this movie was. So, yeah, Brain Donors is one you definitely want to check out. It's a really fantastic film. If you're looking for a good modern-day comedy that uses the classic screwball style tradition, toy boat, this is definitely going to work for you. It's a very underrated film. I say definitely check out Brain Donors. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last movie that we have here, and that is Brooke Shields and Timothy Dalton in Brenda Starr. Time for another interesting film failures. This is one of those films that originally began production in 1981 when they wanted Deborah Harry, who was from the band Blondie and would later become a film actress in her own right, starring in David Cronenberg's Videodrome. They were going to do it with her and George Hamilton starring as Basil St. John. Unfortunately, that project never went through. And then Brooke Shields, after her success in the early 80s with The Blue Lagoon and Endless Love, she was cast in the film. They then brought in Timothy Dalton, who, when they were making this movie, he actually did get cast as James Bond for The Living Daylights, which was in '87. Yeah, this movie was filmed back in July of 1986. Think about that. This movie was shot 6 years ago, sat on a shelf at a studio because of distribution right issues, got released in some cities in 1989 in France, and didn't get released in America until 1992. You really think this movie's going to be any good? Well, sorry to tell you, it's not. I mean, that trailer showed some promise to it, but man, this is a mess of a film. It's a movie that really, really did not work whatsoever. It's a film that really, you can see the effort that's being put in there. There is some creative elements to it, but it's just a bad movie all around. It's a really shame that this movie did not work out as well as I think they wanted it to. What's even sadder is that there are far superior movies that get released straight to video because the studio doesn't believe in it. They don't think it's going to make a profit. Somebody looked at this and said, no, there's enough fans that will go see a Brenda Starr movie. We don't care if this movie's been sitting on a shelf for 6 years. Put it out there in theaters. Surely everybody's going to go see it. And no, nobody went to go see it. It got trashed by critics. And really, the movie speaks for itself. That trailer may show you some brief flashes of promise to it, but it just doesn't work. It's not a very well-written script. This is back when comic book movies were not seen as a big deal. Nobody really wanted to take a chance on these movies. And it was kind of seen as a dying format until Batman rejuvenated it again 3 years after this movie was shot and filmed. But, yeah, this movie just didn't work. It's a film that really was a major misfire on so many levels, and despite some promising elements there, it just didn't work overall. Avoid Brenda Starr like the plague. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll wrap up April 1992 with 5 more movies, including White Sands, Passed Away, Year of the Comet, A Midnight Clear, and The Playboy. So we'll look at those 5 movies next time. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.